I'm Adam Spate, back here with Officer Dana Cato, uh, going through the book Inshallah, available on Amazon, anywhere you can buy some books. And last time we talked about a moment of silence, about literally the moment of silence when you dropped on the tarmac. Now that we all know what a tarmac is, thanks to your flashback to 1983. Love that. So now this one, and again, we keep saying this. We don't want this to be just a book report where we just give away every line of your book, but it's more of just the story. The story needs to get out there. Anything we can do to help that would be great. So chapter 2 is the job, and it picks up right where the other one left off. The other one you were going through the green zone, or through the red zone to the green zone.
Correct.
And so this one starts with, just picks up right where it leaves off. So when you talked about how you got there, the colonel turned in his seat and said, "Welcome to the green zone, mate. I'm going to take you to Saddam's palace, which is now being used as the headquarters for the American embassy personnel." So this goes into your introduction to Saddam's palace, to the whole compound, and all of that. So first of all, your heart finally slows down a little bit.
Yeah.
From coming through the red zone, and then that's what you're greeted with.
Yeah, because we're sitting on out in the red zone, and I'm waiting to get into the green zone. And like I told you before, I felt all the tension in the car. But as soon as we got through the gate, as soon as the Army allowed us to come in, I could feel the whole car level just drop. Everybody was at ease. Weapons they weren't necessarily unloaded, but they were just set aside. Everybody slowed down. Everything just slowed down. And the colonel said, "Hey, we turned to me and said, hey, we're gonna go to Saddam's palace. That's where it's being housed right now is the U.S. Embassy, and most of the expat offices are also being used in there, and that's where my company's headquarters was at as well." So we're headed for just riding through the green zone, and I'm just trying to take it all in. I'm still on day one. I still
on day one.
Still haven't got out of day one. So I'm just trying to take it all in. I'm looking at everything that's going on. Surprisingly to me, a lot of Iraqis running around, civilian cars driving here, driving there. And we probably rode about, 15 minutes, and we come upon this mansion, just this castle-looking mansion. And as soon as we couldn't pull up on the grounds, so we had to get out of the car and walk in. We had to park across the street. But you could tell right away that Saddam was just how much he thought of himself, because this thing was huge. I mean, you could have put, 33, 34 football fields on this thing easily.
Yeah.
And everywhere you looked, there was a bust of Saddam. And I don't mean a bust like you sit on a table. This was a bust that was on top of his palace. These things were probably, 60 feet high and 50 feet wide of him wearing armored helmet, whatever the case may be, sitting on each corner of the house. So we walked across, and of course I had to get searched to go in there by
Really?
by the local guard force that was there, right? Who I didn't know who these guys were. They were foreign workers as well. And they searched me down pretty good, looked through everything. Not the guys I was with, not the colonel, not Mike, because they had already been vetted. They had all the badges. They had everything they needed. I didn't have anything.
You were still the new guy.
I was still the new guy. And so I finally get inside the palace grounds, and they're just huge. We still got a long way to walk just to get to the palace doors. And it looks like a presidential palace. It's got the U-shaped driveway in it, and everything where you could pull up to the main doors. We didn't go in the proper main doors, and I believe that was where the ambassador that was there for the United States, that's kind of his entrance back into his office. And then there were doors on the other ends. So we kind of went off to one on the right. But as soon as we broke the door and went in to the palace, it just stopped me in my tracks. everything looked like it came out of a 1920s movie. It was kind of marble, plated gold. The pictures that were on the wall, the way the staircase went up, it just looked like something out of a 1920s movie that we would have seen here in a large house. And I was just kind of taken aback. But I didn't really get to take it all in because my mind could not register where I was standing. So I get up in the morning. I get on a Russian plane.
At the Hilton.
At the Hilton. I fly to Baghdad. I get in a vehicle with two people I don't know. No weapons. They're talking about the danger we're in between where we're going and where we're trying to get to. I make it through that, and 10 minutes later, I'm standing in Saddam Hussein's palace. And
That's quite a day.
I'm trying to figure out if this is even real now.
That is quite a day.
So,
You went from being tied with a rope into a chair on a Russian plane to now you're standing in Saddam's palace.
and it's far from over. It's far from over. And now I'm starting to think this needs to end. Today needs to end. So the colonel takes off walking. He's like, "Follow me." He's like, "I know where I'm going." Well, this place is busy. I'm amazed at how many people were there. What I was more amazed of was the lack of military personnel I saw there.
That was one line that I did have highlighted in the book. Was you said what shocked me most was that I didn't see a lot of military men or women.
No, it was all civilians. Now
Was it civilians or was it contractors? Were you considering yourself military?
No.
During this? Okay.
No, I consider myself a contractor, but these were diplomats working in the embassy. Now, I could tell the difference immediately between a diplomat and a contractor. Two different attitudes,
Right.
two different mindsets. You could tell all the contractors that were there, number one, by the way they dressed. Number two, by their attitude, their military presence. The diplomats were a little bit different. A lot of them were even wearing suits, which kind of blew me away. Well dressed like they were at the office working 7-day-a-week job, right? So I was just kind of taking that in and walking and trying to follow this colonel who was not slowing down at all. And we're going upstairs and turning right and turning left and turning here. And I'm not familiar with anywhere that I'm at. And finally make it to this little office area. It's got a little foyer with a little waiting room in it. And he told me just sit there. Somebody be with you. And I sat down. And here I am. So I'm sitting here. And I'm just thinking, okay, this has really happened to me. And I'm not sure how this all took place. But that was my introduction to going into some of, into Saddam's life and what Saddam's life was. And looking at how elaborate he lived and not knowing at that time that was just one of many, mmany palaces that he had all over that country.
Was this a main one, or were they all kind of similar?
I think they were all built different in certain circumstances, but I think this is one of the main ones he stayed at a lot because it was in Baghdad and it was close to the airport. But he had one at the airport as well. Now, I never went inside that one, but he had one at the airport as well. And then, of course, his sons had pretty nice living areas as well. And then he had them all the way up in the Erbil and up in the resort areas or up on the mountains. He had them everywhere. But it was shocking to me to see that this is Saddam's palace now, and here are all these Americans, and not just Americans, but people from everywhere, all walks of life. And this place is up and running. It's its own little city in there, It's doing its own thing. And it was just very surreal to me. So here I sat. I'm just sitting in this waiting room waiting for somebody to come talk to me. And nobody really is. Just walking back and forth. I'm sitting there looking. Nobody's saying much to me. Not even speaking to me. It's like I wasn't even there. So I just sat there waiting to see what would happen next.
This is after about an hour.
Yeah.
2 American men appeared and sat on the couch facing me.
Yeah, sure enough. They finally come in. They sit down and sit right in front of me. And I'm like, hey, man, how you doing? I'm like, I'm good.
Hell of a day.
I'm good.
Had a day.
I guess I'm good. I guess I'm supposed to know, what's going on. It's like, well, welcome. Glad you're here. Introduce themselves. I didn't use the last name of some of these guys because some of them are still contracting and doing their thing, and I wasn't going to put that out there for their security reasons or whatever the case may be. And I'm not sure where some of them are today. They may be doing security here at home. They may be somewhere else. A lot of them moved on, went to higher profile places, and some of them stayed in that area and went to Afghanistan and different places doing their thing. So I don't know where they might be. So the names in this book that I use a full name. I have permission to do so.
Okay.
Others, I just kept it on the down low because I didn't want. So this one guy, Ronnie G, that I talk about, he was an American. He was a former Marine. I believe it was a sniper as well. He was there.
I don't think you mentioned that part.
I may not have, yeah, but I think that's what it was. And I knew right away. I could tell his military presence and who he was, and big dip in his mouth, and the way he was dressed, and the weapons he was carrying. He was very relaxed, And he welcomes me aboard, and the project manager that was there welcomes me aboard as well. And started talking to me about where we'd be going, what we'd be doing, and I literally just stopped and went, okay, what is my job? and I can remember Ronnie looking over at the project manager and then looking back at me, and he said, no one told you what you were going to be doing here? I said, no. Nobody told me what I was going to be doing here. Could you clue me in? And he just looked over at the project manager like, okay, all right. And he said, well, you're going to be overseeing and guarding the Iraqi interim government, which I don't think I went into more detail in this conversation, but the first thing I had to ask him was, what was an interim government? I didn't even understand what we were talking about here. Because at that time, in my mind, Iraq didn't have a government.
Right.
And it didn't. It didn't have a government. So this is the government that the Coalitional Provisional Authority is putting together.
Which we do talk about in Chapter 3.
And we will get to that, yes. So he said they're putting a government together, and they're going to need to be guarded and taken care of. And I said, okay, I get that. That can register. Who? He said, the government. I said, I get it. He said, okay. I said, wait, who in the government? He said, the government. I said, I don't think you're listening to me.
He's like, I'm being clear.
You're being very clear. Who in the government? I'm like, he's the government, the entire government. I'm like, the entire government of Iraq. Yes. Everybody. Yes. The entire government. Yes. I can't do this. I mean, that's the first thing I said. I can't do that. I do not have the ability or capability to guard, to take care of an entire sitting government, if that's what you're telling me. And he's just nonchalant. He's like, man, you'll have no problem. You just do it like you did it in the Marine Corps, and you'll be fine. And I'm like, I can't do this. There's no way. I don't understand it. And I was just kind of in shock. I think I just sat there for a minute. And they were still talking. And still to this day, I don't know what they were saying. Because I'm just I'm ready to like go. I got to go back home. I got to go back home. So this is the third time in day one that I've said to myself, you need to turn around and go back where you came from. This is... You way
back to the Kuwait City Hilton, preferably.
You're in way over your head. Way over your head.
I love the sentence that says the feeling I had back on the road in the green zone started to creep back on me now. And then the quote is, I don't even know what the hell this government is made up of, guys.
Had no idea. None at all. None at all. And then, he started to kind of break it down, explain to me a little bit better.
Yeah, he said, listen, you'll have a company of Gurkhas to assist you.
Yeah,
said,
yeah.
What the hell's a Gurkha?
That's what he says, You'll have a company of Gurkhas, and you're going to be fine. You just treat them like Marines. And I'm like, what's a Gurkha? what is it? I've heard of the Gurkhas, but I've never met a Gurkha. Not realize at that time these were the guys who were checking me in when I came in the first time when I walked through the gate, right? So I didn't even know what a Gurkha was, and he said, "Listen, you're gonna have a company of these guys, or a battalion of them. I can't remember how they broke that down at the time." He said, "You just treat them like Marines. You run them like Marines, and you'll do fine. You're gonna be in a compound. You're gonna have and." And as he started explaining a little bit, I started to relax a little bit because it started to make a little bit more sense to me. It wasn't, it was, he made it sound like it was going to be on some type of a secure place. That all I had to do was keep the bad guy out. And I thought, well, if you give me the right man, you give me the right equipment, then okay, maybe I can do that. I've been trained for that type thing. But I still didn't know what I was about to get into. I had a little bit of an idea at that point, but you couldn't see it without seeing it. Does that make sense?
It does. And there's actually a line in here that I had a question about. You said, and you were kind of reflecting about what you thought at the time, but it says, "I would never have accepted the offer if I had known about this before I left." Was that strictly a feeling you had then, or is that something you kind of look back on and be like, I would not have done it had I known? Like, is that a sentiment that you still to this day subscribe to, or was it just one of those in the moment kind of thoughts?
I'm gonna answer that in a strange way. You put in a job to be a teacher at a high school. I put in a job to be a police officer. I would have never looked down a list and went, oh, there's a job to guard the Iraqi government. I think I'll put in for that. I would have never put in for that. No, right?
So you wouldn't have even been in that situation to begin with to even look back on and say it worked out well or it didn't?
Nope, I wouldn't have. I would have, if I would have seen that on paper before I walked in and they would have went, here's what you're applying for. Here's what we need you over here for. I would have said no.
That's probably why they didn't put it on there.
Well, I mean, yeah, it makes sense in the end. Because here you got an American guy who's running this compound at the time, who's starting it up. He's getting started. That's Ronnie. That's what he's doing. He's trying to get this thing started. So he'd been over there for a number of months before I came. Well, the way the company worked, you do 4 months in, 2 months out, 4 months in, 2 months out, right? They let you go on vacation, get a breather, get away from that stuff. Because it's not like a regular job. You're not going to work at 9 o'clock in the morning, getting off at 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
Right.
You're working 24/7 if you're needed to be working. You're living on that compound. Anything that's going on at any time of the night, somebody's either banging on your door, calling you on your phone. It's a nonstop, and it can be a nonstop, right?
It has to be a nonstop.
Yeah, absolutely. So, because you never knew when something was going to happen. Well, he was living that situation. Plus, he was an American who could communicate with the embassy. And I think that's what they were looking for more than anything else. The American embassy's kind of driving this thing. The American ambassador's driving this thing. They'd like to have an American in that situation that could talk back and forth. And I think that was probably the most important part to them than really anything else. But it was time. He was ready to go home and go on vacation for a little while.
So the plan was for him to come back in 2 months.
The plan was for him to come back in 2 months.
Did he?
Well, here's the thing. The plan was for him to come back in 2 months, and my contract would have been over. That was it. They were bringing me there to go over there for 2 months for him. And when he came back, I would be done. So in the contracting world, you don't necessarily have a future. So you're signing a contract for a particular amount of time. So I knew at that time, now I knew what they really wanted me there for. I didn't understand that then, I understood it now, was to cover him while he was gone. And then when he came back, most likely I would be gone. There wouldn't be another job for me. So I'm thinking, okay, I'll make, I don't know, $40,000 in 2 months, and I'll go home. Hey, that ain't a bad living, right?
No.
You know, I made $40,000. I can go home. I can live with that.
2 months.
So that's where my whole mindset was at that point. And I was like, okay, well, then I just got to get through this for 2 months. That's kind of where I was sitting. But this day, it didn't quit. It got longer, you know. So after Ron explained everything to me, he said, now I got to go down and get you your proper badges. And the badges were something else. You needed one to get into the embassy. You needed one to get into the green zone. You needed one to get into my compound. You needed one to get into the convention center. You needed one to get into the hours. You had to have badges for everything. And then they had to have certain letters on them. Could you carry a weapon? Could you not carry a weapon? All these things were identified and had to be identified by the Army, had to be identified by everybody. So it was kind of it was an overwhelming, confusing type thing. So I get sit back over where I checked in and sit down, and they start asking me 10,000 questions and handing me badges. Well, you get a badge for this, you get a badge for that, and you can carry this, and you can carry that. I don't understand any of them. None of them. And they're all taking my picture. And I'm like, that's what I look like in every one of them, because the day I'm wore out.
Still the day.
Still the day, and I'm wore out, and it's starting to get dusk.
And so it definitely was not over. The day was not over. People went running.
People went running. So they had these big sirens over there that go off whenever anybody's shooting at you from the air, whether it be a rocket, mortar, whatever the case may be. I didn't know this. Nobody told me anything. So, you know, I go back. I'm walking with him to the vehicle. He's like, let's go. We'll get the car. I'll take you over to where you're going to be working and living. I'm like, okay, it's great. So we start walking to the car, and this siren goes off. And it reminded me of when I was a child back at Kershaw, South Carolina, back before they had good weather reporting. People would spot a tornado or a funnel cloud, and the fire department cranked that siren. And that'll let you know you need to take cover. And I was like, man, this sounds just like that. And then people started running. And people were running, and they're not running in the direction I'm going. They're running the other way. And Ronnie's just walking.
Calm as a cucumber.
Calm as a cucumber.
Cool as a cucumber.
Yeah, cool ass, calm ass, cool as a cucumber. So I'm like, well, Ronnie, where all these people going, right? And what struck me funny out of all of that was, here are these people in these dress type clothes, some in suits, some in nice button down shirts, throwing on camouflage flak jackets and helmets, and running back toward the Saddam's palace. And I'm walking away from it with Ronnie. I said, where are they going? What's going on? He said, well, this is pretty standard. You know, this siren goes off. Somebody's probably firing a rocket at us, firing a mortar at us. And he just kept walking. And I'm like, okay, all right. Why are we not going back that way? It's like, come on, man, don't worry about it. Let's go. Let's get in the car. And we jump in this SUV and we take off. And
you said, before you said, okay, then where are we going? And he said, look, if one hits you, it was just your time.
yeah, that's it. Hey, man, if one lands on you, it's just your time. And this becomes the theme. I mean, as you go forward,
It kind of has to.
yeah, but damn, I didn't know that did. You know, I didn't have a way of knowing that. You know, if one hits you, it's your time. Well, of course it's my time. Well, why am I standing out here taking that chance? Right? None of that made sense to me.
We could make it not my time.
Yeah, just let's go that way. We don't have to go this way. But I didn't know what to do. I just, and every ounce of my body's going, just turn around and go back into that building. And I didn't. I just followed him, and I got into this black SUV, and we cranked up, and we took off.
The thing I like about the book is then you went back, you recognize the sound, because
I did.
We had another one of those flashbacks to 1983
Yeah.
at Camp Pendleton when you were doing your infantry training school.
Yes. So I heard what I knew to be a fact of a mortar round being launched. Boom. I heard it to a T. I knew exactly what it was. I even kind of looked at Ronnie. But you're right. My mind kind of went back because in 1983, after I got out of the Marines, I went to infantry training school out in Camp Pendleton, California. And I was a mortarman by trade. That's what I was made, a mortarman. So within an infantry unit, you're either a rifleman, a machine gunner, a mortarman, or a tank assault guy. That's the 4 jobs. That's pretty much it, right? So you'll have 3 platoons of all the riflemen, and you'll have 1 platoon made up of these special weapons. The machine gun, the anti-tank rounds, or the mortar crew, which I was part of the mortar crew. And we made a company together as one, right? So when we would go out to do a training, for instance, the machine gunners would get split amongst the platoons to support them.
Okay.
The anti-tank guys would get split amongst the platoons to support them. The mortars would stay in their own place to protect all of them.
Really?
Yes. So they're patrolling in different areas. They need local artillery support. We were the smallest artillery there was. We could support our own people. So I could shoot up to about 3,500 meters with my little 60 mortar. 81's a little bit bigger. They go about, they go further out. And we can get into that later. But I trained on the 81 millimeter mortars, what we trained on to begin with, because you had to know the difference in the size and the difference in the rounds and so on and so forth. And the things were just, they're heavy. They weigh a lot. We walked a lot with them. But I knew the damage that they would do. I was the one firing those. I had never really been on the receiving end of those.
Well, you said the 81 millimeter, talking about those. You said that it had a kill radius of 50 meters and an injury radius of 100 meters.
That's right.
A kill radius of 50 meters.
If it landed in the middle of a football field, anything within 50 meters was going to die. Anything on the football field was going to catch shrapnel.
God.
Some way, shape, or form. Yeah, absolutely. And that gets bigger as you go up.
You said they were most likely using 120.
That would be bigger. They would even have they'd have a bigger kill radius, bigger injury radius. And then when you get into your bigger artilleries, like our howitzers, then that's even bigger than that. And then kind of the way these things work. And when Ronnie said to me, if you get hit, if one lands on you, it's just your time. My mind was in a different area because of this. A mortar platoon or a mortar section. So we're firing at the enemy, and I got 3 mortars. So what I'm doing is I'm taking a map and I'm turning it into a round 360-degree map. So I've got somebody out there telling me where the enemy is. I'm doing an equation, if he's looking at it from the left or from the right or wherever, where I could put his spot, my spot, where he told me the enemy was, spin that board, and it kind of puts us all on line. So even though he's looking at it from the left, once I spin it, I'm looking at it from his angle. And then I put data on one gun. And that gun fires 1 round out. And when that round hits, he adjusts it from where he's sitting. So if I miss it by 100 meters, he's going to tell me 100 meters left, 200 meters right, 50 meters up, 50 meters down, whatever needs to be. And I'm going to adjust that on the board. And then we're going to put that on the gun until that gun hits that target. Now what's happening is at the same time I'm giving that one gun that data, the other 3 are putting that data on their guns as well. Once gun 1 gets on target, I'm going to fire for effect and fire 3 rounds out of every gun. All 9 of those rounds are going to that one spot. The Iraqis did not have the ability to do that. So they couldn't put a round on a precise target. They just fired it and hope it went to where it was going. Hope it landed somewhere in the green zone. So technically, he was right. But while we're driving around and I'm hearing these rounds go, I think there's somebody up there going, hey, you missed them. You got to move 50 to the left or 50 to the right. So I'm waiting for this barrage to just come down on top of us and take us out.
Because if they're anywhere close, it's a matter of time.
That's right.
In your experience.
Exactly. So if it's troops in the open like that you're shooting at, you get that one round in the middle. If you get the other two rounds, 25, 50 on each side, man, you're covering 300 yards of kill radius. Easy. So I'm in that mindset. There's someone out there observing where we're at, and they're trying to walk this thing right on top of us. And this wasn't the case. So my mindset was in a different place.
Well, that's interesting, though. So something that I hadn't thought about is, did you ever adjust your mindset to kind of have to, not dumb things down, but take things out of your training and kind of put yourself in the shoes of their training?
Absolutely. Yeah. Had to turn it around. Once I realized they didn't have the ability to pinpoint or be precision shooters, I was able to relax a little bit. Now that sounds so damn stupid, but it's true. And it was right. If it did become the theme. If it's your time to go, it's your time to go. And there was a guy that was sitting there, was a contractor. I don't know if he's a contractor or military. I can't remember. But he was sitting not too far outside Saddam's palace, and he was writing a letter on a picnic table. And a round lands on the picnic table, but it doesn't explode. What killed him was the splinters.
No.
Yes, coming off the picnic table. So, what's your time? If you get hit. And another thing about these rounds that didn't go off, they were getting these rounds from everywhere. And I think we'll kind of get into that a little bit later. And when I say rounds, the ammunition they were firing at us. Everything has a safety to it. Even the mortars that I fired, when you put them in and dropped them, when they came out, they had a pin that would pop off the side that would start to activate them. They also had a pin we had to pull before we ever dropped them in that would help to activate them. And then when they left the tube, they would have to rotate about 12 times before they would activate.
Really?
So you have a 3 safety mechanism on this one thing. Miss one, it doesn't go off. So if they have the ability to shoot a mortar round, put it in something, set it on fire, and get it to launch somehow. If they can't get it to spin, it's not going to blow. So we had plenty of duds come in, quite a bit, and that was one. But it hit a picnic table.
That's crazy.
And it was so heavy and so violent that the splinters in itself is what went through the guy's throat and killed him. It wasn't the explosion.
Well, so that brings up another question that I just had while you were talking about that, because I know we're kind of focusing on your time in Iraq and security that you did there, but we also don't want to limit everything to this book. So when you were talking about how they weren't the most accurate, they weren't the most sophisticated with their weapons, that was something that was repeated in all of the new documentaries and all that have come out about Mogadishu, is that, and even though that was just horrible, that the Somalis couldn't shoot. Like they went through, they just were so inaccurate. It was just, they just had what seemed like endless supplies of ammunition and guns that they just kind of hit stuff eventually. Is that accurate?
That is accurate. Now, they had some well-trained terrorists on their side, some that could make some good headshots here and there.
In Somalia or Iraq?
In Iraq.
Okay.
But for the most part, no. They would just what we call pray and spray, right? Yeah. They turn around the corner and you can see it on videos where they're just kind of shooting right. or shooting around the corner or whatever. You didn't. Now, listen, you got 30, 40 rounds coming down range at you. Yeah. You know, you standing in the middle of a street, there's a pretty good chance.
It might be spray and pray, but that's a lot of spray.
That's right. But I would say that more people that got injured and killed over there, it was done by unconventional means such as IEDs, car bombs, instead of being shot with an AK-47, right? They used mass destruction of weapons to do so. Blowing up a car with 30, 40 people standing around is devastating. It's devastating as to what it's going to do. What it's going to do to your brain, what that explosion's going to do, is going to do much more damage than me sticking a rifle around a corner and firing a few rounds and not even aiming. And they knew that, guerrilla warfare, and they were pretty good at it. They got really good at it. So you never worried so much about the guy with the rifle. You worried about the guy driving the car.
And that's got to be psychologically and emotionally almost worse. Because you see a guy with a gun, or even if you don't see them, you know where they are. That's a little bit more black and white.
Sure.
But, anyone driving a car, anyone riding a bike, anyone with a cell phone, that's got to make you paranoid.
Yeah, that one stretch of road that was between the green zone, and it wasn't just the airport. There were other supply routes throughout the country that the military used, and they run convoys. Everything blew up. It didn't matter what it could be: a dead animal, it could be a dead body, certainly a car on the side of the road. Anything could explode over there at any time. Now that was much more concerning than the guy with the rifle. I'd rather fight the guy with the rifle one-on-one. That's easily defended. But when you can't see it coming, it's a whole different ball game.
What is just because you talked about the kill radius of a mortar round, what is the kill radius of an IED? Because we heard about IEDs all the time.
There's no standard kill radius for an IED. Okay, one thing from a blast, from an explosion. We'd have bomb threats at school or whatever all the time, and nobody knew what to do. We just evacuate the building. Well, now we know you need to be at least 600 yards away from anything that's going to explode. 600 yards is a long way.
It's a long way.
That's a long way. But that doesn't mean because you're 600 yards away. Pieces of that vehicle could fly a long, long way, and you never see a little piece of metal coming, and it gets you.
That's all it takes.
The blast itself, though, if you're close to the blast itself, what we've seen from a medical standpoint of what it does to your brain and the organs in your body is just devastating. TBI, traumatic brain injury, and you're done. You're done. So, very devastating. Not an actual kill radius that you can nail down. Every car bomb was different. It all depended on how much explosives were in it. It could be 100 pounds. It could be 2,100 pounds. It could be a guy in a suicide vest.
Yeah, true.
Right? But walks into this room where there's 7 of us, and we're done. Now the guy next door is fine, but we're done. So it was, and there was a psychological end to that. Very, very much so. Your mind stayed there more than it did things falling from the sky. Because things falling from the sky just became normal.
That was your reprieve.
Yeah.
Oh, good. It's just stuff falling
that was
from the
normal.
sky.
It really did. So you learn after a while that if you heard the rocket, it's like hearing a jet and looking up. It's gone. It's gone. It's already cut the air and it's going that way, and you're good. You didn't want to hear a whistle. That was not good.
That meant it was close.
Yeah, it was on top of it. that could be a bad day. That could be a bad day.
Or the shattering of a picnic table.
Right.
Those are not good
right.
sounds.
And definitely, as we go on through this book, there's going to be plenty of whistles. Plenty. Plenty.
It is still day one.
It's still day one. Still day one.
And then you go out back into the red zone, and you said you left the sanctuary of the green zone back into the red zone, and you said, "Wait, this is the red zone I'm standing in now." And he says, "Not only are you standing in it, brother, but you're also going to be living in it."
You're going to be living in it. You're going to be living in it. So this compound that I was going to be on, because it was going to be the Iraq government compound, you had to have Iraqis working in it. Regular, everyday Iraqis. They were going to have to come to work somehow. So you had to have a gate they could come in. So half this compound ends up being in the green zone, protected, and the other half of this compound is sitting in the red zone, unprotected. It just so happened the house I'm staying in is in the red zone. So pretty much that's what he said. I said, so we're standing back here in the red zone. He said, oh, not only that, brother, you're going to be living in the red zone right there. And I thought, oh, my God. And I've already heard a few of these mortar rounds hit the ground. And I'm still hearing them launch, and the sirens are still going off. And everybody around me, except me, is walking around like they're in the mall. You know, nothing's going on. And I'm so tight and tense, and at the same time can't say anything, can't do anything, because I don't want to look stupid.
Well, not only can you not do anything, Ronnie can't even use the bathroom,
No.
apparently, without you.
That's right. So Ronnie goes to the bathroom, slams the door, and I thought a mortar round landed on the house. And I think I screamed incoming or something stupid, and it was kind of funny. He comes running around the corners like, what the hell's wrong with you? I'm like, he goes, the wind caught the door, man. The door slammed. And I'm like, this is it. I'm done. I'm just toasted. I'm toasted.
Still day one.
Still day one. Now it's nighttime, but it's day one. It's day one.
And that's pretty much the end of day one. Luckily, you did get you got a cot. Ronnie got to bed.
Yeah.
You had a cot.
Hey, I would have slept on a 2x4. Yeah. I didn't care. It could have been a bed of nails.
Picnic table.
I believe I would have went to sleep, no problem, because I was dead. I was done. I had been up since probably 6 o'clock that morning, and
at the Kuwait City Hilton.
Now by this time, when I get ready to lay down to go to bed, I've forgotten that I was ever in Kuwait. I forgot about the flight up there. All of that seemed a month away. And it was day one. It was day one.
Love it. Then it gets better. You had breakfast. You had a good breakfast.
I did have a good breakfast.
You thought it was an MRE, not an MRE.
I was not. Thought I was going to have an MRE. Now, KBR, which is Kellogg Brown and Root, they had the big contract over there for to do everything. So KBR is part of the war machine in this country.
Really?
When I start talking about contracts and things like that, they're part of the war machine. So they deploy to these areas to set up the chow halls to feed people, laundromats to clean things. They help run the PXs, fire department, ambulances. They bring it all. And all these guys are contractors, but they're with Kellogg Brown and Root, so they're not over there in a weapon contract position, right? They're not carrying a weapon. They're doing a specific job every day, just like they would do here in the United States.
That's so interesting because you do hear about the war machine and then sort of the business of war and how people stand to profit from war. And the thing that goes to people's minds immediately is bullets, ammunition, guns. You don't think about the chow hall people, and how much money they can make by outfitting the commissaries or the PXs or the chow halls, the mess halls, whatever it is. Like you don't think about that stuff.
No, they had people over there that would wash your clothes. You take them, drop them off. They wash them, dry them, fold them. You go back over there, you pick them up. It didn't cost anything. No. They would take care of this for you, and they were getting paid to do it. And it goes even deeper and further than that. So we need gas for our vehicle.
Sure.
So somebody comes in and puts a gas station in, not a gas station like the Circle K you stop out here, but just got 2 pumps there. The next thing they realize is, oh, you know what? These guys are pumping gas, and when they're done, they're spilling it on the ground. Well, we got to do something about that. So let's cement everything. Let's make sure we're not polluting the environment. They got to do that. They take care of that. There was a Burger King. There was a Pizza Hut. There was a Kentucky Fried Chicken. All these things were brought in. These people ran them all. So it was all contracted by that. People that put up the cement walls, the cement barriers, people that did any construction. All of this was done by Kellogg, Brown, and Root.
Oh, really? Oh, the same people brought all this.
It was massive amount of people that they brought over there. A lot of people went over there and made good money doing what they did, running the PX.
Yeah. I mean, it is stuff that is necessary to a degree. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know if a Burger King is necessary, but I mean, it kind of is. Like, you want the people to be fed who are working there, and why not a Burger King?
Well, it kind of goes back to when I talked about landing in Afghanistan. When you're the first one on the ground, there ain't no Burger King. There's no KBR. Nobody's cooking your food. No, you're lucky to get a bottle of water airdropped to you at times. But once you're established, like the green zones were established, then they bring the war machine in, right? It's part of the war machine. It's not the people fighting the war, but it is definitely supporting the war effort.
Yeah, and just to clarify, the term war machine has become stigmatized and people talk about it. You're not necessarily talking about it in a negative way as much as it is. I mean, it like you said, they're supporting the war effort. It's just a part of what has to happen.
Well,
I mean,
the war machine, you know, we were warned as a country by President Eisenhower not to allow the industrial war machine to take over or we'd stay at war. Well, we didn't listen to him. So there is a lot of money to be made off of war, and there always has been.
mm-hmm.
And I even remember reading General Schwarzkopf's book when the first plane load landed, and he was ready to get his troops on the ground and talk to them. And everybody stepped off the plane was a general or a colonel. He was like, "What are y'all going to do? What are y'all doing here? What are y'all going to do for me?" Well, they were already over there looking to see, hey, who can we contact to get the water contract over here? To get this contract, to get that contract. Oh yeah, that's true. All of that's true. None of that's hidden. That they make money off of that. You know what a pallet of water cost you here compared to what it cost the government over there? It's ridiculous. So you think about generators, you think about water, you think about food, you think about this, you think about all the contracted stuff you got to have to get over there that the government's paying for. And the government's not sitting down itemizing. They're going, what do you want to get it over here? This much. Bam. People get rich off of war.
They do indeed.
And I think I saw that more going into this role. I would have never seen that in my Marine Corps role.
That's true.
Never. Because you never saw the back end. You always saw the front end. You never got to see the back end. Right? You didn't see the business end. You saw the front end. So.
Well, you did get eggs, pancakes,
Oh,
turkey
great,
bacon,
great,
sausage out of
great,
it. So
great breakfast. Great breakfast. It was.
that was probably the best after the day you had
Yes.
before. Although the breakfast the previous day at
Yeah.
Kuwait City was probably pretty nice too. So you
Right.
had back-to-back great breakfasts.
Great breakfasts, yeah. This one was even better. You know, and when he said we were going to breakfast, I'm like, okay. And I had no idea. At this time, I hadn't seen the Burger Kings I hadn't seen those yet.
So that was there when you were there.
Yeah.
Burger King was.
Yeah. So I hadn't seen those yet. They're getting established. But I didn't know where they were in the green zone. I didn't even know how big the green zone was yet. I mean, I had this one day on this palace and then
right.
this one night and now I'm up the next morning, we're going to breakfast. And I'm like, and he's walking me over like we're going to the Waffle House. I mean, I'm like, okay, let's, whatever. I didn't know where we were going. And we went over to this hotel, and then they had this huge huge, what they call dining facility there. They call it DFAC. And it was just cloth tables, and it was nice. It was nice.
Well, and the fact that you just said we went over to this hotel,
Mm-hmm.
I think when most people think of a compound in Iraq, we don't think hotels. You mentioned there was a 12-story building.
Yeah.
I think like that is something that I think most people in the States can't wrap our heads around, being in a compound in Iraq. Like we just don't think in those terms. So that was a hotel. That was a hotel when Saddam was there.
Yeah, it
On
was
the
it was the Al Rashid Hotel on its own compound. So they had walls. Like we have city blocks that separate each other, right?
Mm.
Their city blocks were separated by walls.
And this was all within the green zone.
This was all within the green zone.
And is the green zone is gated. So there was a fence around the green zone.
The green zone had big walls that the Americans put there around it. And then it had checkpoints to go into that the Army guarded. They were huge checkpoints, right? It wasn't just like 2 Army soldiers standing there. There was tanks. There was everything, pointed right out the door, ready to roll. It was a checkpoint that was ready to kill anything that came up that wasn't supposed to be there. They had everything they needed to do it, right? It was not just, hey, you guys okay? They pulled a little thing. No, didn't work that way. No, they were stocked and ready to roll, but everything else was secured by a wall that they had put in. The walls I'm talking about they existed. They existed.
Okay.
They were probably about 6 feet high, and they existed. So their blocks were wrapped off by walls, and inside these walls there would be buildings. So it was places of work for people. Then the offices did different things, and then the Al Rashid Hotel had its own. The convention center that was in between my compound and the hotel had its own. So we were all like side by side by side. And then the palace was on into the green zone a little bit more. So there wasn't anything on the other side of me. It was kind of open land, but it was still guarded. It was still blocked off where nobody could come through. So we walked over to the Al Rashid to go eat that morning. Of course, we're just strolling along like nothing had happened the day before. Birds chirping, blue skies, and we're just walking. He's just talking, and I'm just looking up. Because I'm just still waiting for things to come falling out of the sky, right? I'm still listening. But it was just, and that was strange. So
He said we walked back to the compound as if taking a spring stroll through the park.
Yeah, it was nothing. I mean, you go through that the night before, which I thought was a big deal. I thought that was a big deal. I
would think so.
I did not know. That wasn't a big deal. The big deals were coming. That wasn't one of them.
I liked you started the back of the building that you would be living in, which you had to go outside to access. Ronnie told me they did not use this part of the building other than for allowing some special forces guys to interrogate or interview specific individuals to gain information.
Yeah. I didn't know who these guys were either. He's like, yeah, we got some guys coming here, and they bring a few people in here, and they kind of interview them, interrogate them. And I'm asking him. I'm like, what? What do you, I don't ask.
So after that, you give us another flashback into being in Darwin, Australia in September of 2001 and kind of how that all played out.
Yeah, I think, coming back from eating that day and looking around and looking at the facilities I was going to be living in and starting to realize I'm not at the Kuwait Hilton anymore.
Sadly.
Things are a little bit different. You're looking at different style toilets, different style bathrooms, and different style things.
You did talk about that.
Yeah, that's in the book as well. And realizing, well, I'm going to be living a little bit third worldish here, but not as bad as I have actually been in before as far as living conditions go. Because I did kind of flash back to Darwin, Australia in 2001. And, of course, as we talked about in the beginning, when they hit the towers, like I said, when I went to Afghanistan, we have nothing, right? You land, you on the ground, and you was on the ground. So when we went in, it had been decided that the equipment we were going to take, because we were flying so far, was going to be nil. You were taking as little as possible. So you got to load your ammo, you got to take this, you got to take that, and you need to be light, because we want to hit the ground, and if we need to move, we can move. Now, when I say light, we had to weigh, because we had to let the helicopters know how much we were going to weigh, so they could depend on how much fuel they were going to need to take. At least when we refueled in the air, they needed to know the minimum they had to hit. I will tell you that my lightest guy weighed 600 pounds.
What?
Yeah. Now, he wasn't a little boy to begin with, which is probably why we put a little bit more on him than we put on everybody else.
He was a pack mule.
But even myself, with all the weight, I weighed, at that time, I weighed 155 pounds, and I was almost 300. Right? And you know, I'm a platoon sergeant. I'm not carrying what my guys are carrying. So you think when I say light, that we were light, but we had everything essential that we needed. The other thing was we didn't know what kind of water rations we were going to get resupplied with either. That was going to be tough, being that far away from our support. So us flying in that far. So we weren't able to take it, you know, don't bring a book to read. You don't need it. You know, don't bring anything. Back then they had Walkmans and these things.
Yeah.
None of that's going with you. You're not bringing anything. But you're bringing the essentials, what we need to fight if we get into it, what we need to have. So we took it, and that's what we went with. So there's nothing on the ground there. So, you know, I think I even put in there if we would have to dig our own holes, and you would have to be selective about how you did that. So we look around and go, okay, which way is the wind blowing all the time? Let's use this spot over here. And you'd have your own little ammo can or ammo box that you take with you. That was your toilet. So you dig a hole, put that over the top of it, do your thing, cover it up. As you went, you'd have to move too. So after, you know, you fill the place up after a while. You don't want to start digging and you're digging up the same guys. Right. So you had to move around. So water was scarce. We weren't taking baths. We weren't taking showers. We weren't doing anything. We wash your clothes. You had 3 or 4 pairs of socks. You try to wring them out, hang them up, let them dry. We all stunk, but we all smelt the same. So it didn't matter. You know, we're living out in this dirt, in these holes that we've been digging. And, you know, you could be in much worse places than in a room with a toilet that you can't sit down on, that these Turkish toilets are made out of. I didn't have it as bad as I have had it.
And you said I wasn't out in the elements, and somehow I would find a way to have a throne installed.
I would, and we did.
Then, okay, I mentioned the 12-story building. You talked about the view from the top of that thing.
Unbelievable. Could see all of Baghdad, see the river, see the palace. I could see everything. And we used to sit up there at night and watch them roll their electricity, because they didn't have a grid that could keep everybody with electricity. So they would run enough electricity to make sure refrigerators could stay cold. So you'd literally watch a third of the city be lit for a little while. And then it would go dark, and another third would be lit. And then it would go dark, and another third would be lit. And they kept rolling that grid because they didn't have enough electricity to feed to everybody.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
You also talked about the view to be able to see threats approaching.
You can see them coming. You can see it coming. I could sit up there and watch the Army have firefights. Could literally sit and watch the Army have firefights.
I bet that's fascinating.
It is fascinating. To see it from that angle was different. To watch that C-130 gunship go up and down that river firing at night and just watch it and just like, wow. So it's unbelievable. These gunships, they shoot so many rounds, and when they got the tracer rounds out there, for every yellow round you see, there's 6 you can't.
Is that how a tracer round works?
That's how it works. So they use tracer rounds to help them get on target. Now they don't have to do that with the gunships, but they still shoot the tracer rounds, and it looks like a yellow tornado.
Yeah.
Now a lot of times they won't use the tracer rounds at all. You can hear it, but you can't see them at all. But for every one of those yellow rounds you see, there's 5 or 6 behind it you can't see. Yeah. Same thing when you're shooting out of regular weapons, and you see in these war movies or whatever, they got that yellow round going down range, that tracer round. Behind that tracer round, there's 5 rounds you can't see.
So when you're loading, you have to load a tracer round?
It's on the belt. It's already belt fed in it. Now, if you're loading an individual magazine,
Yeah.
yes, you will. If you're using it that way. Most times when you're loading individual magazines, you're not going to do that. But a belt-fed weapon has them on them already. So not only does that keep you from sometimes having to get down behind it and aim, you can follow that round onto your target. And once you're on that target, it's Katie bar the door. You just lay it down. And for every one of those yellow rounds, there's 5 behind it you can't see.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. It's
Gosh.
devastating. Devastating.
Well, you also said that you saw what was in your opinion the crown jewel of the compound, and that was the indoor swimming pool.
Indoor swimming pool. And I'm not even sure I put all this in there, but that swimming pool, when I got over there, it was kind of, they told me, well, it doesn't work very well. It hadn't been cleaned up. Well, I was swimming my whole life.
Yeah, and I'm gonna let you talk about this a little bit more, but the thing that I wrote CHS Swim. You were the swim coach here at Chapin High School.
Yes,
I did not know until I read this that was. I mean, I assumed obviously you had to have some swimming background, but it was. You said you had a eureka moment. I did too when I read this.
Yeah. I coached the swim team up here. I coach the swim team at American Leadership Academy now.
Do you really?
Yeah. So, but I grew up swimming in a pool. Grew up swimming in a pool, swimming on a swim team, right? When I was like 6 years old. So it was only natural that I'd become a lifeguard. And so I became a lifeguard. One of the things we had to do. We had to clean the pool, take care of the pumps, take care of this, take care of that. And it was old-fashioned types, not new like they are now, or a little bit more high-tech. Well, that's what that was over there. It was the exact same thing we had. So I said, I can get this thing up and running. And I did. And then they dropped a damn rocket on it and blew
Did they really?
Yeah.
You didn't talk about
No,
that.
it's not in the book. They blew all my windows out. As soon as I got it up and running, boom.
How long was it up and running before they did that?
Probably about 7-8 days.
No.
So much so that I had put enough chlorine in it that you couldn't swim it. And you just had to wait. And we're going to let it die out, get the pH and everything down. So I was going to wait about a week, and we caught a rocket. The rocket didn't actually hit the pool itself. It hit outside on the grounds. So when it blew, it was during the day. So it blows, boom. Well, we know we got one that hit on the grounds, on the compound. So I start walking around looking for it. And the first thing I see is there's no glass.
The tears start flowing.
And all this glass is in this pool. And it has just destroyed everything over there. I was like, oh, well, nice try.
I
But,
can't believe you left that out.
yeah, I did. I forgot to put that in there. Sure enough, blew my pool up. Blew it up. And I never got it back together again.
So you never got to use it.
I would have never gotten all that glass out of there without draining it. There's no way.
Oh,
No way.
oh, that's tough. But I just picture you standing there with a towel, like just sad face.
I was mad. I was pretty mad. I was pretty upset because I put some work into that pool. My maintenance guy was like, man, I need some tools. He's like, I got some tools, sir. I'm like, I'm cranking this thing. I get it going. And me, you put a tool in my hand for a $10 job, I could turn it into a $10,000 job. It just so happened I knew what I was doing with that. I didn't know what I was doing with nothing else, right? No.
Oh, that was a fun story. But yeah, I thought it was great just because it was kind of funny, but also it did remind me of your time here coaching at Chapin. All right. You met Saddam Hussein.
Had to take a couple of the ministers over to the Baghdad airport. And they decided they wanted to drive over. And I went with, we did have a military convoy escort that. and they escorted that because it was the ministers of that town. So once they started getting established in there, they wanted to go over and see this guy. So they had him at the airport in Baghdad. That's where they were holding him. So we go over there. I didn't even know where we were going. I just knew we were going over there, and they were having a discussion about something. So they met with a bunch of the heads of Army guys over there in that area, and I think there were a couple of Air Force guys, JAG units, so on and so forth. And they went in and talked to him, and I was standing right outside while they were doing it, and he wasn't a little man either.
Really?
No, he had some size on him. And they were just wearing each other out. Not in English, in Arabic. The ministers would not get close to that cage.
Really?
They wouldn't get near it. No, they stayed far back. Now, they were screaming at him like it was back and forth. And they were calling each other from what I understood and from what I asked. You know, he was telling them their mothers were dogs, and he'd come back, and he was the president of the republic, and he would be back in charge, and all of them would be done. And then they were screaming at him for stuff he'd done in the past, and for all the people he had killed, and all the bad things. And it was just, it was kind of interesting. Kind of interesting.
You also, the translator.
Safe.
And was that, you mentioned how Ronnie said basically don't trust him.
Don't trust him.
So did that prove to be wise advice, or is it just sort of,
No.
it was just kind of understood to not give too much away to anybody?
It was wise advice because I'm the type guy that I can become very trusting. You know, very quick. If I think you're up and on my side, and you know, Ronnie said, hey, these guys they're persuasive. They are. They'll tell you everything you want to hear. Everything. Don't turn your back on them. Not once. Don't trust them for anything. Don't trust them. And he was right. I mean, look, what we were trying to protect, everybody else was trying to get rid of. And it came to a point that even the civilians who were within Iraq, not even in the government, were angry with their own government because society had broken down. There were no jobs. Food was getting scarce. Water was getting bad. You had the Shia and the Sunnis starting to fight over reservoirs that they had used to share before, right? Things are drying up. Things are not looking good at this point. And so the people are not happy with the government officials either. So not only do you have this terrorist militia side trying to tear the country apart, Saddam supporters trying to tear the country apart, you got Shia and the Sunni now starting to get a little angry with each other.
Any excuse they can get to get mad at each other, they'll take it.
Which is taking the government from the inside and starting to rip it a little apart because of their differences as well. So as you'll start to see the differences that they did have, you know.
And we'll talk about that in the next chapter. So did your translator do anything? Like, was there anything that was like, he's a bad guy, or was it just kind of,
no,
you just kept him at arm's length?
As a matter of fact, I think he probably had a pretty good heart. I think he was trying to gain from a country rising anew, right? Which who could blame him, right? You know, I'm trying to get a foothold. I'm going to try to move forward. The Americans are going to help me do this. They're giving me this job, giving me an opportunity to do this. I don't think he ever did anything malicious that I can remember or to my knowledge. He did some stupid things, which we'll talk about as we go further, that I had to keep him in check on a few times. But I don't think he ever did anything malicious. Everything he ever did, if he thought he was helping me, he did it with good intention.
That's good. So we do come back to him.
Oh, quite a bit.
Oh, good.
listen, guy lived with me. I mean, he was with me all the time. So we spent a lot of time together. So yeah, you come back to him quite a bit.
Good.
Quite a bit.
Okay, that was chapter 2, The Job. It was a lot. It was basically a day. Just a day in the life
It was a day in the life.
of Dana Cato.
Man, it was tough.
Gosh.
It was crazy. It was surreal.
But the funny thing is we keep kind of joking about that it was just one day. We kind of bury the lead, which is in this day is when you find out what your job is. Like the name of it's not the day, the name of it's the job.
It's the job.
And so amongst all of this craziness from waking up at the Hilton in Kuwait City with its pool to getting on the plane with the Russians, tying yourself with a rope, landing in the middle of a tarmac, making that drive through the red zone to the green zone, having mortars dropped on you. What gets lost in that is you found out your job was to provide security for the government of Iraq.
Yes. So at the end of the day, I find out my job, but I still don't understand it. I still have no idea exactly what I'm going to be doing. I know what the job is. I've been told that. But I still can't picture what this is all going to look like. Hadn't got the structure of this thing down yet.
Well, at this point, all you know is there's an indoor pool.
And an indoor pool.
At this point, you don't know that your heart is going to be broken by that indoor pool.
Correct. Yeah. I don't know that my heart's going to be broken by a lot of things.
Well, that is a lot of really good stuff in chapter 2. We'll be covering chapter 3, about the Iraqi Governing Council.
Yeah, we will. But I get some comments from some people on my YouTube channel, which is what I want, and I had to make a couple of corrections here when I said in the introduction that I was at an Army base in Virginia called Dam Neck. That was actually a Navy base. That's where we ate. The Army base we stayed at was called Camp Pendleton, not to be confused with Camp Pendleton, California. And it was an old base that was getting ready to be torn down. And I think another thing I have to throw in there too is my wife wasn't real happy when I said that. She said, "Hey, you're not in the Marines anymore." She said, "I never really said that unless you did something stupid."
Which was never.
No, yeah.
So she never said it.
Right.
So, yeah.
So you do that was stupid. You're not in the Marines anymore, right? So I think that all comes.
You had to add that.
Yeah. So
that
I had to throw a couple of disclaimers in there for
you. Really don't want to screw up the Army Navy.
No, I didn't want to do that either. I didn't want to do that. But I appreciate the comments and you guys want to subscribe to the channel, please do. Put down in the comments what you think, and this will be fun going through this journey with you and some of you that were there, that have seen some of these things, and you could come. We could ride this together. You help refresh my memory, I'll help refresh yours.
Love it.
So I think.
All right. Well, that'll wrap up chapter 2, inshallah. And we'll be talking about the Iraqi Governing Council next. So stay with us.